Well, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folani. In the midst of all these insecurity issues, why was I that chirpy? Well, I'm a bit more optimistic than I've been in a while in terms of us getting to the end of this whole insecurity wahala, because Major General Ibrahim Attahiru, the Chief of Army Staff, actually gave the marching orders to his men, and say that, look, 48 hours. I'm giving you guys 48 hours, speaking to his men, to clear Boko Haram out of that place. In fact, he was quite more graphic. I mean, I'm quoting him so I can use the word. He said, get the bastards out of that place. Aha! I said, this is very, very serious. When the professional begins to speak like that, it means like, we're not playing anymore. I hope that means we're not playing anymore. But the Chief of Army Staff has indeed given his men that in Borno, I don't want to be hearing about Boko Haram. 48 hours you've got. This, of course, is, and he said that, look, it's an onerous task, but I'm right behind you. And, he then did the rest, brought the felicitations of Mr. President. But that was the part that interested me. In fact, the Senate President was speaking, he met with the President as well yesterday. So let's just get a sound bite of that.
In the last few days, we had attacks in your area of responsibility. It is now high time we get back and fight through and support our forces ahead of you. You cannot let this nation down. You must go there and do the needful, and I'll be right.
Nobody would like to see the kind of thing that we experience in various parts of the country in the form of insecurity. As political leaders, we have responsibilities to our people, and we cannot shy away from that. We have to get our people secured. We have to secure the environment for them to earn their means of livelihood. We would like to see our farmers go back to farms before the rains start to come, the rainy season starts. And this means we have to secure the rural parts of Nigeria as well as the urban centers, because we need businesses to flourish. So I believe that between now and probably the next 2 months, there will be a lot of activities to ensure that we recover and secure our environments for our people to lead a very normal life. We also believe that the government is heading in the right direction. You recall that the National Economic Council approved of taking some funds from the excess crude accounts with a view to giving more resources to our armed forces. This is a commendable effort, and we are ready to help with the appropriation to ensure that we buy those, we acquire those security weapons for the armed forces of this country to fight to end this insecurity in the northeast, in the northwest, in the southeast, south, and southwest as well.
Okay, then. So there you are. That was the Senate President speaking yesterday after a meeting in Aso Rock. Our guest in studio is Nelson Ekunjimi, Comrade Ekunjimi, public affairs analyst. Thank you very much, as always, for making time for us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Indeed. And we also have remotely, we have on the line Dr. Ajibola Bashiru, Senate spokesman. Good morning, Senator Bashiru.
Yeah, good morning, Yori.
Thank you very much for joining us. We were just saying that, look, this is cheering news. The direction, or shall I say, the added impetus that this whole campaign, this whole insecurity thing has now got with the Chief of Army Staff, giving the marching orders, as it were, to his men, and word coming from the Senate President that was indeed the thought from the seat of authority. I think he had visited Aso Rock. So do you expect that there's going to be a marked shift now along the lines that we've all been talking about? Because people have been saying that you don't know what exactly the orders are that the men in uniform have, because it has been felt that our men in uniform are capable of taking this matter out if only they have the marching orders. Is that the way we should read it, Senator?
I think we don't have any excuse
not to step up our activities in the area of securing our country. The primary responsibility of any government is just to do that. And in that regard, we do not expect and do not require accolade for doing what we should do, what we ought to do, and what we ought to have done. It's good to hear the Chief of Army Staff designate, because as far as I'm concerned, it's not yet confirmed by the Nigerian Senate as required by Section 18 of the Armed Forces Act, to sound orbit, to talk in terms of motivation and galvanizing the troop. You will know that in military arts, motivation is highly, very crucial, and I think it's commendable. And of course, the Senate President was also optimistic that there will be a series of activities in support of stepping up the fight against insecurity in Nigeria. And it is very important to clarify, the President of the Senate did not say that Nigeria will be totally secure in two months. That would be a tall order, but we must do all that is necessary in terms of expediting procurement, in spite of giving additional financial support for whatever the program the new service chiefs will be. And optimistically, today, by this afternoon, the various Senate committees on defense, on Air Force, Army, and the Navy will be meeting in a closed session for confirmation hearing of the service chief. I happen to be a member of the Air Force Committee of the Senate, and in order not to expose unnecessarily security implications of that, I think only 3 members from each of those committees will be attending with the service chief. So it will give us an opportunity to ask questions that we may not be able to ask for security implications in the public. But the commitment of every Nigerian, whether you're in government or not, is that we must have a secure, livable country that will be able to be a basis for prosperity and welfare of our people.
Sure. You spoke about what the Senate President didn't say, but he did say that in the next 2 months he would expect marked progress way beyond what we are now, which was the tone that was set by the Chief of Army Staff, well, as you put it, designate himself. So yeah, we understand that, but the part that the Senate can play is to give, I think you've indicated, the sort of timely support that it needs for anything whatsoever, anything at all, almost. It's like the Senate will, the National Assembly would also be behind this particular drive, because it's been quite a while since we've heard these categorical terms about we're not playing anymore.
It's very crucial to state that we don't have a choice in the Nigerian Senate, in the National Assembly, and as all Nigerians, than to step up and whatever support is required to step out insecurity. The only reason where there's government anywhere is to be able to secure the citizens, and that is the basis of all theory of governance, either the Thomas Hobbes or that of John Locke, or even the modern democratic theory. So secondly too, and I think it's also very important for us to step out our oversight function. Whatever has been appropriated, either from the service-wide funds or from specific allocation to those agencies, as a National Assembly, we must be ready to look into it and that they are judiciously used. For instance, about 2 months ago, I was part of a mission of the Air Force Committee of the Senate to go around all our Air Force facilities and then to be able to know specifically and practically the challenges being faced by officers and men in the field.
Okay. Senator Bashiru, I just want to turn to my in-studio guest, Comrade Nelson Ekujimi, a public affairs analyst who is with us. So, Nelson, this, I imagine everybody is looking at it and saying that, well, we're about to make a move now. But because we've always been hearing that the conflict, the lingering war, as the Chief of Army Staff referred to it, this whole lingering war has its political aspect as well. The politicians, it has been said, are actually part of the problem, in the sense that It's one thing to do a thing, cleanly, as it were. It's another thing when it's complicated by all sorts of political considerations. With the kind of tones we are hearing now between the Senate President and no doubt the resolve of the presidency, and indeed the Chief of Army Staff, who was, we saw there, quite graphic with his men. Do you think that consideration of the political aspect to this whole crisis will be pushed to the background, so much so that it won't have any as much an effect as it allegedly has been having?
Well, one hopes so, because it has been alluded that there's a political undertone, but now we have seen the political drive. Yes. To send clear signal that no, enough is enough. One hopes that the political undertone will be put underground. But be that as it may, I'm very worried as a Nigerian that now, based on the analysis of these security challenges over some time now, we have recognized that exterminating this terrorism goes beyond the use of force. How are we interfacing with the civilian populace so that we get their buy-in?
Okay, this was a point that the former Chief of Army Staff brought up. Yes. Remember?
Yes.
When he made the statement that surprised many people that we're still going to be wrangling with Boko Haram for another 20 years.
Yes, because once the people don't have the buy-in into the government drive to exterminate this threat to human life and property, then we'll still back to square one. Also, as a Nigerian, I'm concerned, Mr. Senate spokesperson. We talked about the Chief of Army Staff giving the marching orders. We have seen situations whereby the military have driven out the terrorists from a particular local government, only for the Nigerian military to now call on the police to take charge of civil security. How are we equipping the police to be able to withstand that tempo when normalcy returns? Because ordinarily, some of the security challenges that we have saddled the military with are security challenges that are primarily within the purview of policing responsibilities. And for me, that is a worrying dimension to the whole security issue. That how come we are focusing on only the military? What is the role of the police with regards to internal security of Nigeria as regards the constitutional provisions? Is it that the military will now go there, clear the place, the police returns, and before we know it, these terrorists have international affiliations in some few months? Because I have listened to via media where members of the National Assemblies from that region have come out repeatedly to complain loud and clear about the invasion of their villages and towns.
So, Dr. Bashiru, I'm sure what Nelson said, is not unknown to you, aspects of it. But is it your thought that this is a fresh page? The police are still going to have to be involved, but the fact that they couldn't handle the job effectively for so many reasons is why the army is this involved in it. Are you apprehensive at all about the point Nelson Ekujimi raises?
The points that Nelson raised are quite germane, and I totally agree with him. The way you're talking about security is a whole gamut of security architecture, which involve not only the military, the police, but even the intelligence community. And in totality, therefore, the approach of the Nigerian Senate has been to see the whole structure as one that has to be examined. And that was why when resolution was passed, based on those that were abducted at Kagara, the Senate referred back to its resolution on reforming the Nigerian security architecture, which was made on March 17, 2020. Part of this is that there's a need to decentralize the Nigerian police along zonal line. You cannot have a single police command for a country that is so vast geographically and are so well populated with about 180 or 200 million. So we have suggested that there should be zonal police command comprising 3 states, and then having budgetary and operational independence and autonomy to be able to deal with security challenges in the respective geographical areas in Nigeria. And of course, the intelligence community also needs to be strengthened. Most of these incidents occur because our intelligence appear to be paralyzed. If there are sufficient intelligence, then there will have been proactive measure being taken either by the military or by the police. And of course, the question of economy, socio-economic development, infrastructure development is also very crucial. A situation whereby you have apparently some ungoverning area of the country is not conducive for fight against insecurity. And of course, the society and community also has to be well attuned to be on the side of the government, not on the side of the insurrectionist or the insurgency. And that's why the experience we have had from other countries is that you combine a lot of activities in terms of military actions, civilian policing, effective intelligence, surveillance, and community engagement. And of course, opening up many of the unreached areas of the country in terms of road infrastructure, agricultural intervention, education of the people, and of course, mass orientation of the people in that regard. So it's a whole composite of activity, and we believe that what is required, just as been said by yourself and my friend, is that we need a concerted political effort and concern to deal with it. And I just say that without this being done, all our efforts at attracting investment, at developing our economy, will just be like putting water in a basket. So I believe that we should all take this very serious.
Indeed. And again, turning to Nelson, look, when they see governance in these, war-torn areas, these places, when they see quality governance, when the environment is comfortable, is pleasing, and they have much to gain from the environment in which they are in, then there will probably be less of an impact from these people. So there's that part too for governance. Right now, perhaps they feel that without, even with Boko Haram, with this government, the same is the same. Is the difference between 6 and half a dozen. But when it is seen that, no, on the contrary, it is 12 here, and it is these renegades, these Boko Haram people, it's at the very best 6. Nobody will go with them. So there's that part for governance as well. I do believe, did I have a call? Good morning, Mr. Joshua Inire-Walide. I'll let you come back to address that point, Nelson. Good morning, Mr. Joshua Inire-Walide.
Uncle Yori, good morning. How are you, sir?
Very well, thank you. Good morning, sir.
I want to appreciate you for using this platform so generously to address the issues of insecurity. You have done so well. So well. I commend you. I greet your guest.
Indeed. Thank you very much. That's TVC for you. You know it's always our focus.
Oh, absolutely. Very, very awesome. I want to say, Uncle Yori, that we have been bothered psychologically. We have suffered a lot of psychological things. Those of us who care about human life, because of the amount of deaths that have been recorded with this insurgency and the rest of it. But I think the truth is beginning to come out, and we should speak to that truth, Uncle Yori. Sheikh Gumi has revealed that they know where the bandits and all these people are, and he has started engaging them. Uncle Yori, I am clear about it, that the military knows where the Boko Haram people are. They know them. They know the location. So the problem now is, if you kill them, you will cause more problems. But I want the federal government and all the state governors in the north to understand that a huge amount of our national resources are being spent on this insurgency fight. Mm-hmm. What would have been used to develop Nigeria is being deployed.
Okay.
I think enough of playing politics with security.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for calling in. And even though I said I'm coming to you, Nelson, let me quickly get the senator's impression on this conspiracy theory. You know, I don't know how else to put it, that the authorities know where these people are, and if everybody was cooperating the way they should be as Nigerians, we wouldn't have this problem. In other words, we Nigerians are the people working against ourselves. Give me your impression on that. That because of the Sheikh Gumi incident, it shows that the authorities actually know where they are. What would be your comment, sir?
My comment will be predicated with another comment. I'm a legal practitioner, and I believe I can only act based on empirical and scientific knowledge. I cannot base on supposition. I don't believe that any right-thinking Nigerian leader, any right-thinking Nigerian military officer will know where terrorists are located, where people undermining security are located, and they will refuse to take any action. So I don't, without any concrete evidence, beyond the say-so of the so-called Islamic scholar, say that there's a conspiracy, official or otherwise, on behalf of any arm of Nigerian government or security agency with the Boko Haram or any other criminal element. And okay. I will say, with all sense of responsibility, that the kind of trouble, the kind of emotional trauma that many of our leaders, including some of us, go through, will negate such kind of a terrible conspiracy theory.
Okay. All right then. Mazi Okorafor, you've come in. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. You're a good morning, our guest.
Yeah.
So, you see, when you look at the team, the Boko Haram, their slogan, they say Western education, they don't want it. Now, all this issue of kidnapping, what we call them, if we allow this of schools being terrorized by these terrorists in any name, that means they have succeeded. We parents should not allow this to happen. Even the government itself, just parents per se. Parents have to sit up now. Not a question of issue waiting, because the chief of he has given them the directive. Will he see there? He's not there. We make orders, we give policy for implementation. Let them go there and monitor what is happening there. Because not the question you sit there in Abuja and make statements. But the question is this: parents have to be very careful, because the way things are going now, they are trying to kill down education in Nigeria. The primary education, which is the basic education, and the secondary education, which are after primary, secondary, university, they are killing those areas because they cannot go to universities, because the boys in university will fight back. They go to all those people. Now people should be bold enough. Let's not say, wow. Stop running. Balance and calculate your way. If you can die the person clap, look at those boys you showed on the television. Look at how wretched, how tattered they are. Because they have, you don't even know whether the gun they have there is strong or not. So people should try not to be running away, because if you continue running away now, we'll run away. Where are we running to?
Okay. Okay, Mazi, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. That we have a part to play, is what you're saying, and you can stand up to them. Interesting theory there, that they don't go to the universities because those ones can think, and so we'll fight back. But going back to the other point about the conspiracy theory, that following the Sheikh Gumi incident, that viewer had said he is persuaded that the authorities, because the authorities, there are times when the authorities can be big brothers and have eyes everywhere. See, there's very little going on. That's so says, so says that guest. That I don't know. But the senator rebutted that idea.
I want to align myself with the position of the senator. You see, a lot of times, people behave and talk as though those in positions of authority are spirits, or they are angels with special abilities.
But they are almost.
No, they are not.
They are almost. They have so many governments.
Yes, no.
Governments have so many devices.
They have so many devices.
All of which they don't even want you and I to know.
Or even in the midst of those devices, there are some that are fake.
Okay, yeah.
You recollect that.
I'll concede that.
People come up with also, there are a lot of times people bring up a lot of information.
Yeah.
When they try to separate the wheat from the chaff, you discover there's nothing there.
Okay.
So a lot of times, citizens, that is why I mentioned the area of civil authorities relationship, that the citizens have a crucial role to play.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I was in a situation whereby somebody had a very cogent information that would have helped the security authorities. He said I couldn't go to them because I was afraid. And I was like, how do you help us to eliminate crime?
But that's a form of, that's a function of this education. Do people know that they will be safe? Is there no reason for a Nigerian to think that if I go there now, they might just go and arrest me? I'm saying that it's part of this information thing.
That is why I buy into your theory about bringing governance to the people. Let the people realize that, look, there's more to life than killing, abduction, rape.
And that you're better off on our side than on their side. Rashid in Ikorodu called in a while ago. Good morning, sir. Thank you for calling in.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Rashid, good morning, sir. Go ahead quickly now.
Good morning. Yeah, what I'm saying is I'm a first-time caller.
Oh, great to have you.
Yeah. And you see, the issue of insecurity, the issue of insecurity in Nigeria, it is obvious that the political leadership are not committed. They merely saw it as a means of enriching themselves.
Yes,
imagine,
but the current story, hello sir, but the current story, be all that as it, as you might think it is, but picking up from yesterday, you've heard the Chief of Army Staff, well, the Senator said designate, you've heard him, and you've heard the presidency. It's like, are you impressed? Are you optimistic that, well, now that they're talking this way, the things are not quite the same as it was before? I guess that's the question now.
Yeah, we have always been very optimistic each time they make promises. And reverse is always the case.
Okay, I hear you. What you're saying is that you don't trust this until you see results.
Until they deliver.
Okay.
And in every security challenges, you hardly hear of the successful results making a public promises. It is the result that the people requires.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for calling in, Rashid. Senator, you can see the Chief of Army Staff himself did allude to this point when he said it's an onerous responsibility that I'm putting on you guys. And he also said that you cannot let the people down. So, Senator, doesn't that speak of a certain resolve?
Yeah, I think it's very critical that the patriotism in all of us need to be brought out in the fight against insurrection. And that is why we should also not trivialize the enormity of the crisis. For those that talk about conspiracy theory, yes, government has surveillance equipment, but even that, there are limitations. Okay. I have also read of instances when foreign governments have refused to supply necessary equipment and materials on whatever ground to the country. You have also looked at the international dimension and the cross-border nature of even the insurrection itself, by which we need a concerted effort and simultaneous contribution on the part of the 4 or 5 major countries bordering the theater of the insurrection. It's possible for you to know somebody was here at this location at 00 hours, then by 16:00 hours, they might even gone to another country and yet another country because of the closeness of those borders. During one of our oversight function, we've seen, yes, Nigeria has sophisticated surveillance equipment, but then when you cite unusual movement, before you mobilize to even get to those movements, you discover that those locations have been relocated back to another country, for which you need the cooperation and support and approval of another country. So it's a trying time for the military, but just as we have said, it's a concerted effort which requires both international cooperation, need for us as a government to be alive to our responsibility to the communities suffering at this insurrection, and of course to get our act together in terms of infrastructure and social welfare of the people in the theater of insurrection and insurgency.
Okay, I want to thank you very much, Senator Ajibola Bashiru, spokesman of the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, for making time out of a busy schedule to talk with us this morning, and also wish you guys the best of luck in the confirmation hearings that you say will be held later on today. Once more, thank you very much, sir, for coming on our program.
It's my pleasure, Oyori.
All right then. Okay. Mazi Okoro, we've taken Mazi Okoro for. It's my friend, Reverend Dominic. Good morning, Dominic.
Good morning, Yori.
Thank you for calling in.
Yori, I'm very sorry you are letting the spokesperson go. Can I communicate to you?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
I wanted to ask that the spokesperson if he had one of the ambassadors we're sending out, which is former Army Chief of Staff. I don't know the one particular now, who said that there is not lack of information, it's not lack of intelligence. That in Katsina State, before the adoption of the children, they got the information, they got intelligence, but they have no ability to get to the school. The question is this, Yori, if we are listening to ourselves, how could the insurgent who is in the forest have access to the school, and the Nigerian Army, Nigerian Navy, Nigerian Air Force could not get to secure the school, and the insurgent could get there first? And the spokesperson, I want to ask you a question. Do you know him very well? There's no conspiracy story here. Everything that happened in Nigeria today, at least what I understand, I know, that if we must stop insurgents, it's not God. Let the elders of the North, let the political elders of the North, let the economic elders of the North come together to say, how much will we be selling our children and buying them? Anytime we take that step, Yori, things will get better. Because it has come to me and you that with the stories you are hearing, there's conspiracy against ourselves. The clergy told us here that he went to the bush to discuss with the insurgents. Now, one of the young men you trained in Chad is asking a question. How is it easy that you can get to the insurgents in the bush and Nigerian Army cannot get there? If the Nigerian Army knew where they are. So who is lying to who?
Okay.
If the man could trace them, how could Nigerian Army in the whole apparatus, Air Force, Navy, Army could not trace insurgents? An individual like a person like me could trace it to the bush.
Okay.
Who do you want to believe here? There is no war here. We are waging war against ourselves. When we stop selling our children and bring them back, the war will stop.
Thank you very much, Reverend Dominic, for calling in. Well, Nelson, there's an angry Reverend Dominic there. It's like, just like the man Rashid from Ikorodu, he wants to see results. And I'm tired, I'm sick of this talk, and I'd better see results. And that's where we started from.
Yes.
That, look, hopefully it's a new day in this campaign.
Yeah. Yes, every Nigerian is very, very optimistic, and we are hopeful that, we expect that the marching orders
will make a difference.
Will make a difference, this
because we've heard these kind of sentiments before.
Yeah. And like you rightly said, the Nigerian military has all the capabilities to do that, because I'm sure they can execute assignments. Chief of Army Staff designate, like you rightly put it.
Well, it's the senator that made that clarification, that we haven't confirmed there yet.
Yes, being somebody who has been in the theater, who has been on the field, he has seen, he has seen it practically.
Yes,
I'm sure he recognizes the task ahead. He recognizes his own men limitations and what have you.
And it can't have helped that his predecessor was saying that we're going to be stuck in the middle of this for the next 20 years.
So maybe he has this opportunity to write his name in gold, and that is what is inching towards. And we should just pray and hope for wish them the best of luck in.
Good morning, Mr. George. Thank you for calling in.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Thank you for calling. Good morning.
Uncle Yori, ordinarily, it is not the business of the Senate to be addressing insecurity in this country. Their business is lawmaking. But it's a good thing that they are helping to persuade the executive to do what they are supposed to do. But be that as it may, Uncle Yori, I'm not particularly interested in the approach the government is taking to handle the insecurity. Let me just give you two examples, if you can give me 60 seconds.
Sure.
Number one, people seem to insinuate that because the president is a Fulani man, that is why herdsmen in Nigeria are doing whatever they like. No civilian is allowed to hold AK-47 guns. And herdsmen are visibly seen using them. The armed forces, the security agencies cannot disarm them. That's one. When kidnappers kidnap people and the government intervenes and they are rescued, how many times does the incident result to arresting those people or even crushing them? The one in Katsina happened. Where are those people? They released people, but they got them. Nothing was done to them. The Chibok girls are still there. This one in the other secondary school happened. And then this latest one. It is when they kidnap a large group of people that government intervenes. This kidnapping is taking place every day along other roads. If one person or two people are involved, it will not get to the media like people like you to expose it. The approach is not yet firm enough to ensure that it is crushed. So the Chief of Army Staff is starting well, but will he continue like that?
Okay.
That's how all of them start well.
Indeed.
That's why people are skeptical. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. George, for calling in. He brought up the thorny problem, the thorny issue, really, of the whole Fulani dimension of this. I call it thorny because, as has been said rightly, you know, it's not all Fulani headsmen that are criminals.
The truth of the matter is that, like we have stated here severally, the institutions of states are set up for, particular, purposes. And if those institutions of state are failing in their responsibilities, I don't think it will be right for us to profile an ethnic nationality or to profile an occupation. There are thousands of other occupations where we have seen bad eggs. And if we have seen some men who are committing crime, it is the responsibility of each and every one of us to call on the authorities, especially the Nigerian police, that look, what are you guys? People have always talked about this issue of...
but Nelson, you know that what you are saying has been going on and there hasn't been very much joy as a result. It's a very complicated affair.
No, I think... I want to...
Because there will be people, there will be victims, innocent victims of Fulani headsmen's actions.
Yes.
That will be listening to this.
Yes,
and will be saying, we did all of this and it didn't lead us anywhere. Those are the complications I'm talking about.
If you recognize when the Ibarakwa issues came up and the special advisor to the governor, the former commissioner of police Lagos State, Mr. Fatah Osheni, came on air, he was calling on the police to start singing their own praises, in which he mentioned that the police arrested over 51 suspects. And I think the responsibility is on all of us, that when these suspects are arrested, we should also ask the police, when you have arrested, what next?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, see the process through.
See the process through. A lot of times we see the beginning of the process, we neglect or we turn the blind eye, and we start complaining, oh, no arrest has been made, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, but because we don't see the following through.
Because we ourselves, we are not playing our roles.
Okay, I hear you. We've got to leave this subject now, but I want to thank you very much for coming in and sort of looking at the potential for a fresh beginning. That's the only way to put it. Because with the new Chief of Army Staff, Major General... Oh, actually, I understand that you're staying with us for a bit. You know, the incoming... I'm still finding a way to describe Major General Ibrahim Atahiru, because the senator pointed out that he's not yet there. We are going to confirm him. Yes. But I like the way he spoke. I guess most Nigerians would like the way he spoke. Especially that sentence about get the bastards out of there. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We'll look at the whole matter about the looming fuel price increase. Stay with us, please. Okay, welcome back and thank you for joining us. If you just arrived, we will be talking about, well, even our first subject affects everybody's life. And the same with this. Now we're talking about the looming price increase in the pump price of fuel. Where are we now? 162.50 something. I think that's like the official pump price, 162.50. But because of the news that's been, abroad in recent times, there are pumps that have been adjusted to 165. My producer, Kolawole Inosho, was telling me that he bought it at 168 in Abeokuta. God knows what else, you know, what are the kind of prices. So, Nelson, it does look like, and look at the way they are quickly increasing their price. It's so frustrating that when there's an opposite movement and the price is going to come down, they don't react properly. They don't begin this preliminary or this, you know, this one about start to decrease the price a little. Then when we get the figure, we'll decrease it. Now look at what we're going on. Sometimes I wonder why we do these things.
I think it's failure on the part of government, because there's an agency of government that's supposed to enforce. Yes,
PPMC or
the DPR
and the DPR.
DPR, which, you know, I remember the other time when the price increased from 145 to 162 thereabouts. Before a twinkle of an eye, they had already adjusted the pump price.
But all the pumps,
at the time they were selling the
no, who is complicit? Is it the oil companies because if you don't give in, is it the agents who own the petrol stations, or is it the oil companies? Because you remember when we spoke with these people, they tell us the fib that well, they had to come from headquarters, and they haven't come from headquarters to do it. But now, you don't need anybody to come from headquarters to now begin to sell in at least one station in Abeokuta at 168.
In fact, I heard that even some fuel stations out at the outskirts of Lagos sell as high as 170. But I recognize that about a week ago, in some the major marketers sell at 162, 162.50, while the independent marketers are the ones who have adjusted their pump price from 162 to 165 thereabout. And for me, I think it is in the best interest of all of us for the government to consider the truce the olive branch extended to it by the labor movement, in which they had a meeting. They set up a committee that will be reviewing, you know, all these details and come out with what will not cause, you know, industrial unrest in the Nigerian state. So at this point in time, while we recognize that the present regime of 162, 165 was when fuel was selling, when the price of crude oil was about $43 per barrel. And as we speak, we are made to know that the cost of oil per barrel now is hovering around $60. So ordinarily, you expect that the price will increase.
Yes.
But because of the nature of that commodity to the socio-economic existence of Nigerians, it is important for the government to recognize its key role in mediating to ensure that the society is not unsettled. And
there's an even labor field. You know, labor is not...
because this is a period in which we are still coping with the effect of COVID-19. A lot of businesses are still shut. Some businesses are operating at half capacity. And we all know that in some other climes, the economy is already picking up, which is...
So you're admonishing government to see what they can do to, as it were, play within this very fragile situation.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for, you know, holding on, Mr. Yakub in Dokpemun, Lagos. Good morning, sir.
Thank you, Jijori, and then Mr. Kujene. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Jijori, to be sincere, I bought fuel, particularly in Ifo, precisely. It's 170 per liter, 170 naira per liter. You see, Chibiori, the issue is this. We are all thinking that if Dangote refinery comes up, maybe this price will go down. But I'm thinking otherwise. Because where that refinery was sited, I think it's a trade zone. So I don't think that Dangote refinery can bring this price down. I'm starting to be corrected. If it is going to bring it down, I'm expecting Mr. Kujimi to say something about that. Another thing is this, quickly, the pump price is going up. I think almost 10 or some other states in this country are yet to pay 30,000 naira minimum wage to the worker. So how are they going to cope? Not only even worker, we that we even self-employed. So everything is just going up. Who is paying us? Who is giving us peanuts? Government should do the needful. If the price is to come down, these people will not bring it down. They will tell you that they are expecting something from the up and this. And then when this thing goes up, immediately, I repeat,
it's frustrating.
What is the work of DPS?
Exactly.
It's only God Almighty will help us in this country. Thank you and good morning, sir.
Thank you very much for calling in, Mr. Yakub. As he says there, you see widely fluctuating prices, but everybody is ready to, make sure that they don't incur a loss. But when they were, quite frankly, it's called stealing. When they were stealing our money, following when the thing went down, and they refused to adjust, it's equivalent of stealing from the public.
Absolutely. And I want to quickly respond to Mr. Yakub.
Sure.
He made mention of the local refining of the product. I think Mr. Yakub should recognize that this is common economics. When you take crude oil from Nigeria to, say, Singapore or where have you, you have incurred transportation costs. But if you are refining it locally, if you are spending 100 naira to take it to maybe Singapore, if you are refining it locally, you will not spend up to that amount because of the distance covered. Also, you recognize that when you are taking crude oil out of the country, there are some taxes to be paid. There are insurance claims to be made. But when you are doing it locally, those costs will definitely reduce.
You probably have only excise.
Yes, that is why the labor movement is calling for the deregulation based on local refinery rather than deregulation based on importation. And that is where the problem lies.
Okay, Mr. Kesandu Inimo, good morning, sir. Thank you for calling in.
Uncle Yuri, I greet you.
Good morning. Thank you for calling.
Good morning, our guest. Kenko Kesandu, I call from Ituboma in Imo State. You see, the major challenge we're having in this country is that we have a government who is not sincere about this deregulation. The government has decided not to be sincere and do not want to use they don't want to understand our plight as Nigerians. You understand that this material time of epileptic power supply that they refuse to look into, the only thing we resort to is this fuel for our businesses, for our homes. But unfortunately, they're making the whole life uncomfortable for Nigerians. What are we asking for? If you really want to deregulate, go ahead and be sincere about it. It will do Nigeria a whole lot of good. For former governor of Imo State once said, sacrifice a little, sacrifice a little, enjoy forever. We're ready to make this little sacrifice if and only if government is ready to do their part. Look at what we're saying now. Any moment from now, they want to increase VAT again. We're saying that the state of the country is not good. And what will it cost Nigerians to get all these modular refineries in this country work again? You see, it is becoming a problem. The major challenge we're having in this country is that Mr. President has to be sincere about this deregulation. And they should understand that this is a God-given gift to Nigerians, and we should not suffer in consuming it. This is what God gave us freely, and we should enjoy it. Not really, all this being equal, Nigeria should not buy fuel more than 50 naira per liter. Nigerian Mr. President should just act presidential and make sure that the yearnings and aspirations of Nigerians are met. This is all we ask. God bless Nigeria.
Thank you very much for calling in. Well, I guess if government, I can just remember, I can just think, imagine my friend, the presidential spokesperson. Additional. But if Ajuri were to hear this, I wanted to respond to it, he'd probably say something about, look, this is why there's so many economic policies and, succeeding economic policies that these are like the birth pains. I imagine that would be the government perspective, but at the time will come, they'll probably give the analogy of a woman in labor, and then subsequently you see the lovely bundle of joy, and then now all of that pain is worth it if this is the result of it. That would be Ajuri Ngelale, my paraphrasing him. How would you see what, for instance, Kesandu just said?
Well, I think we must get one thing.
In brief, please, because we've got to go now.
We must get one thing very clear. The issue about government insincerity, I think we should put that aside. I think people must realize that government has a responsibility to provide for the citizenry. And in providing for the citizenry, it might involve taking some painful and hard decisions. But it is our responsibility as citizens to say, come on, guys, even though we know that this decision you are going to take is in our collective interest in the long run, why don't we take a shorter methods of arriving at that destination. The method you want to use is too fast for us. Our health, we are not healthy enough to go at that pace. Can you please reconsider our health situation and say, okay, let us walk, instead of us going at 100 kilometers per hour, can we start going at 20 kilometers per hour? Because the truth of the matter is that we need to deregulate in order to, take out the loss, the corruption in the oil industry. And deregulation is one method of freeing a lot of resources for developmental purposes. But with our present situation whereby the refineries are not working locally, it means we are dependent, and the citizens must not be made to pay for the inefficiency of government. Because we had 4 refineries. There's no reason why 4 refineries should remain comatose for decades now.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Nelson. And as you said, in relation to this matter that you're talking about, the government, needs to, quite frankly, be providing for the citizenry. And this is the same thing that they need to be doing in the case of our war against terror, especially up north there. All those governors there, they have been criticized, some rightly, maybe some wrongly. What are you doing for the citizenry?
Even the local government chairman.
And everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody doesn't seem to be pulling their weight, but hopefully this is a new day. We can't expand on that particular aspect of the subject, but thank you very much, Nelson Ekujimi, for coming on. And once again, our thanks to Senator Dr. Ajibola Bashiru, spokesman of the Senate, and thank you to all our guests that called in. I can't mention you all for fear of forgetting someone and thereby incurring offense. I'm not going to go there, but thank you very much. You make the program what it is. So this is where the program is going to have to stop today. We'll join you tomorrow with a fresh edition, God willing, but not before I say all the anti-COVID protocols, please keep them in check, keep them in view. Don't go where there are crowds. Keep the distancing, 6 feet, 2 meters. What else? Masking. You don't even have a choice with masking now. Now that the president has signed something and it's a regulation. Wash hands frequently. I think I covered them all. Don't worry about the order. Stay safe. Bye-bye. I'm Yori Folarin.